So just to explain to anyone joining on Twitter, this event is being held in Nouns Discord, but we are simulcasting the audio over to Twitter. So feel free to stick around and listen on Twitter here if it's more convenient. But if you want the interactive experience, come over into Discord. The pinned tweet here shows a link directly to the Discord event. Trying something a little new here. If you can't join on Discord and you want to listen in on Twitter, that's fine. You can also just ask questions by commenting on the pinned tweet, and we will address them. We'll check periodically to see. And everyone here on Discord, welcome.
Howdy, y'all.
How's everybody doing?
It's been a great week, man. It's crazy.
What's been the best part
Doing
of
great
so far?
I'm eating a quick cookie before the call, so I'm toggling the mute off and getting my chews in, you know?
Oh, I know what you mean. Yeah, getting the chews in.
Getting real crispy.
Little pre-AMA cookie, of course. I would.
Yes, sir.
Less. So far, the Twitter Spaces is made up primarily of Aptoshi and her alts, so that's great.
Always got to go in there. I feel like the more people that come in this space, it starts pushing it to the top and stuff too. So
yeah, for sure. If you guys do want to join us over on the Twitter Space, feel free. Just we won't be bringing anyone up as a speaker, and you won't really want to listen there. But you can do it if you just want to support us. Get more people in the space on both platforms. Hey, it worked. We have Gabo.
But you can see.
We have Poap.fr who just joined over from Twitter, so I think it's maybe working. Hey, Poap.
Oh yeah, I see in there. And Sternhardt's in there.
Yep.
Woody, you could see how after this one, I know you've been at the other AMAs, but this would definitely be another place that we could implement sort of the video things we've been messing with, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be super fun.
Be super tight. I'm sorry.
It would be super tight.
Where is the Twitter space?
Yeah, we should probably do some cross-pollination. I'm recording my screen up, Toshi. Do you mind posting a link?
Yeah, I'll post it here.
Yeah, post a link to the Twitter in the text. I guess there's no text channel that goes along with this community voice channel, eh? Or only the
there is
one top right corner, right. So top right corner, use the top right corner for questions as well. Actually, I'll keep it open. There we go. Gabo Arg found it, and then Aptoshi just posted the link over to the Twitter Spaces. So if you have any questions during this AMA, today our topic is what the heck is Nouncil? A lot of people ask that when they first come into Nouns. They want to know what Nouncil is all about. Do people own Nouns? How do you join Nouncil? What's the point of Nouncil? All these questions and more. Myself and Aptoshi are both Nouncilers, and we've also got Nouncil Ambassador, Joel Cares with us too, who was one of the founding members of Nouncil, to talk a little bit about it, answer some questions from us, and then also hopefully from you guys as we go along. So I'll probably just wait a couple more minutes here for people to filter in, and then we'll get started. Talk amongst yourselves.
Also, feel free to post any questions just right there in the community voice chat, or just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Yep, and for those who've joined, a few people have joined on Twitter since I mentioned before. So what we're doing here is the event is being held in Nouns Discord, and if you look at the pinned tweet, you can link directly to that event if you want to join interactively over here. The sound might be a little bit better as well, but otherwise we're simulcasting the audio for your convenience here on the Noun Square Twitter, so you're able to listen in, and you won't be able to speak on this because of mic feedback issues, but if you wanted to ask a question, you can just respond to that pinned tweet above, and we'll check it periodically to see if anyone has any questions and answer them as we go. We have to get this eventually, Aptoshi, where we're like simulcasting to the entire world on every platform.
Exactly. I'm going to share the screen so I can get on the Nouncil site for everybody.
Ooh, and then I'm recording the screen, so then I can share my screen, and it'll be like screenception.
Do you want to? Were you going to share?
No, I was just making a bad joke.
Oh, okay.
I did go on Twitter, and I'm listening with the accounts I was able to.
Nice, thanks. I see little Nerman there.
Yeah.
Hey, Nerman. We have our first question, actually. What does the owl say when he answers the phone? Who dis?
Hello.
Hello.
Oh.
Not the kind of questions we were expecting, but we'll allow it. All right, 2:05 EST. Let's get things rolling here. Welcome, everybody, to our 5th weekly Ask Us Anything here in the Discord. Discord community call that we've been doing, Toshi and myself, and sometimes 9999 when his schedule allows. That's why he's always a ghost on our graphic, because we just don't know when he might drop in. Today we have a guest with us as well, Joel Cares, who's a longtime Nounciller, in fact, since the very beginning. And so we invited him to talk with us today about what Nouncil is. In fact, what the heck Nouncil is. Getting a little bit spicy for nouns. Welcome, Joel.
Watch your tongue swearing out here. Also, hello.
All right. For anybody, pretend someone has no knowledge of nouns whatsoever. What is Nouncil?
A council of nounish builders is the easiest phrase. But what I've been thinking of it lately is it's just a home for people building in the nouns ecosystem. So anyone who's working on nounish stuff or making things in nouns, it's a pretty easy application process, and this just becomes like all of the makers in the nouniverse.
Awesome.
What are the initial requirements that would allow someone to apply for membership and be able to click this button and go through?
We just changed it. I'm going to try and remember it exactly, but I think it's they just have to have an established track record of nounish building, which is pretty flexible, and really like you could probably draw some nounish art or make a Twitter account and start posting, like just something that shows that you're building in the nouns world. There's a couple other requirements, but that's really the only one that like gets people a yes or no. And it's pretty lax. Like we want to be very inclusive, but the idea is you can't join Nouncil the second you find out about nouns. You can join Nouncil, once you're a little ways into building stuff with nouns.
And I think the original, phrasing was you must have shipped at least, one sort of nounish project. Ship meaning even just completed it, right? Or be that like a prop that you uploaded in and then you completed that or something. So I think this definitely changed because in that there are obviously people in the communities, maybe they didn't have a prop pass, but they're still very involved. I think that's why it may have changed a tiny bit to, if you are a builder within this community and within the nouns, you can apply for Nouncil. So,
well, actually, if we go way back to the very beginning when this whole thing started, I think it's important to note that it was kind of, well, actually, you know what, Joel, why don't you tell us how this whole thing started and what the sort of the source of Nouncil was? Like, where did it come from and what was the original group made up of compared to what it is now?
So there's a conversation going, I think it started on Twitter, about just making a council of nounish community leaders or Psych Dre, could you mute yourself there?
Yeah, thanks. You may have to.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thanks, Trey.
There was just like a lot of people operating in nouns and around nouns who didn't own a noun. And that's where I feel like the energy from this came from, is a lot of people wanted to be a part of nouns, but didn't quite know how. They were building stuff, but there wasn't any official capacity that they could tap in. So that was the energy a lot of people were looking for when 4156, after a conversation on Twitter, made a channel in Nouns Discord. I forget, I think it was just called Nounish Council at first. And then it really was just like whoever showed up started the discussion of what this thing could be. We first settled on Nouncilors have to be a Nounish builder or a leader of a Nounish project extension or a leader of a Nounish extension.
Right.
And that was the big shift. Is in the beginning there were kind of two different visions. One was just Nounish builders, and then the other one was a lot of these Nounish extensions are and anything that's an ERC 721 token. Anyways, it becomes kind of like a community symbol. You know, like it's an access token to a community. And we were kind of thinking too, like every community should have like an elected leader, and it could be a council of elected community leaders. So that thought was floating in there in the beginning too. But as we grew and started just welcoming all Nouns builders, it kind of made sense to drop that part and really just leave it open to whoever's building in Nouns that wants to be part of a bigger community. And it's still pretty early with that, because I think ultimately there's going to be a variety of programs that help the broad Nounish builder community as a whole. But right now, like really, like you come here to have access to people to talk to who are also working with Nouns.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we found over time. And of course, it was an experiment that was founded and we didn't know exactly how it was going to go at the time. The Nouncil's only been around since February. But at the time, we thought, you know, it was important to only have one representative per NFT project. But as time went on, we realized that sometimes people work on multiple projects. Sometimes there's multiple people who are builders in their own right, who all work kind of under the umbrella of one project. And it just didn't make sense to exclude certain good builders from the group because of those types of criteria.
Yeah, something that also I've been thinking about a lot is in Ethereum and crypto in general, there's this idea of like Sybil resistance.
Yeah. Abuzar, your mic is on. Please mute. Abuzar, if you can hear us, please mute your mic. Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Joel.
There's just this idea floating around like Sybil resistant solutions to community building. So, you know, things that, for instance, on the extreme end, if you registered your proof of humanness with like a driver's license ID that was verified, you know, like your wallet becomes like it represents a person. Mm-hmm. And I think solutions to that problem that were a little more kind of creative, community-led, and not, you know, they don't require any actual doxing or driver's license or whatnot, because now as Nouncil exists, you know, we have, it's like 90 members and they're all like a unique human with one voice, one vote. And it becomes a really special place that in my mind is like playground for things in the future that you can only do when you do know each member is a real person.
Yeah, and of course making a difference here, a distinction between their doxed identity and their personhood, I guess.
Yeah.
Curious too, just below us and below all of the funded proposals channels is the Nouncil whole section. So down there you can see these general conversations happening in Nouncil. You can see the votes that are taking place within there. So you can very clearly see that everyone, you know, as much as there's, you know, more members now within the Nouncil, everyone does really have their own voice. I feel like I find more votes on Nouncil that have sort of a split thing going on than in other votes that I see on chain even. So everyone really, I believe, takes the voting part seriously with the Nouncil. And I believe that with, even you can see now there's 14 delegated Nouns. Like we have a very large voice within the ecosystem together.
That's a good segue, Aptoshi, into one of the other questions we had for Joel, which is what is the point of Nouncil? So Aptoshi touched a little bit on the responsibilities of voting and governance. Can you explain basically what Nouncil's responsibilities are where that's concerned?
I remember when we did that CDT podcast, and that the first question, everyone said, hello. And then CDT's first question was, so what's the point of it all? And I kind of blanked because it's a big question. And I guess like, I like to operate in kind of expansive modes of thought where it's like right now, Nouncil focuses on Noun style governance and operates a community grants program. Like that's what it does now. But what's the point I like to try and go as big as I can with that. And really just like, you can become a noun by buying a noun. You can become a nounsler by being active in the nounish community. Like it really becomes like a broad second home for the people in this world on a big level. We currently do participate in noun style governance with delegated nouns that have been delegated to us. So reading through proposals, discussing proposals, and kind of coming to a democratic community consensus is a large part of what we're doing now. The other big one is we have a community grant program where each nounsler that is eligible, and eligibility just means they have to be active and present in Nouncil. There's some metrics for that, but they have to be actively voting on our votes. And if you are putting that level of effort in, you get a permissionless 1 ETH grant to spend on proliferating nouns in the best way that you think possible. And that was another thing that's just like supporting builders, like in a decentralized fashion, enabling people to use their own intuition to kind of the nouns mission. And that taps into some other larger things too that I'm really just trying to pull together with Nouncil. I have bigger ideas that I'm kind of getting close to rolling out, but a home for nounish builders is the core focus of everything that I think about Nouncil.
Awesome. I definitely think we should come back to the grants in a few minutes because that's a really interesting program to talk about. And I think I want to hear about future plans towards the end as well. But just going back to the governance piece, so obviously it's a responsibility of Nouncil to vote on all these nouns votes because we have 14 nouns delegated to us. But as someone who's thinking of joining Nouncil, Blooms, please mute your mic. As someone who's thinking of joining Nouncil, what would you say to them is a benefit of participating in that kind of governance? Because maybe to someone it just sounds like work, and so it is work. But why is it worth doing?
It is work, and I think there's some stuff that potentially we need to figure out the longer term incentives and whys as to why people do this. But the thing that makes the most sense right now is just like people are here, they want to meet people, socialize, network. They probably have ideas of proposals of their own that they want to push forward. And this becomes a community that you can tap into as a way to integrate into the nouns world. The old way was you come to Nouns with a large proposal that you think about by yourself and you submit it and then it gets ignored. And I think the new way is you join Nouncil, you participate in voting on things, you meet a lot of people here, and then when you do have a big proposal, you can workshop it around and submit it, and it becomes a path properly socialize proposals and get them passed, like just another way to meet the people of Nouns now. But with the community grants is a big thing too. Like ultimately, it becomes like a permissionless fuel source for people, to kind of keep just doing what they're doing with minimal friction. That stuff will, over time, I think there'll be programs that make it really exciting and obvious to be in Nouncil. I do kind of think, though, with the votes thing, it's funny because participating in governance is a lot of work. And there are some people who are very active with governance, specifically with Nouns now, reading proposals and evaluating them publicly. Some people who are just Nouncilers or some people who've now been delegated their own nouns. And I think that figuring out the incentive structure for that stuff is also pretty important because right now, like, why are they putting so much work in? Like, kind of because they just want to be part of the community and out of the goodness of their heart. But we probably need a little more than that in the long term to keep people enthusiastically working like that.
Toshi, what's your perspective as someone who came into Nouncil, and I think it was part of your growth within Nouns as a builder? What do you think you gained from the governance piece and from Nouncil?
Well, I think the immediate gain for me was, you're already in this mindset of building on nouns, and you're now joining this group where everyone has that exact same mindset as well. So you're really gaining access to a bunch of people who probably think a lot like you.
That comes back to our original motto of Nouncil, right, Joel? Not a cult.
Yeah, not a cult.
It is not a cult. It just so happens to be a group of individuals who kind of have this like-mindedness. And then on top of that, you know, one of the sort of themes we want to throw around for this AMA is like nouns jargon, right? That comes up a lot, how we can kind of, you know, say these phrases or words or associate, like even Nouncil. We could do we're doing this entire AMA on Nouncil, which is a word that we throw around often, and sometimes people don't even know what that means. So I think that when you join a community of people who are not only like-minded, but you can just say these words and these programs and talk about small grants and talk about Nouncil and all these things within the Nouns ecosystem, and everyone kind of knows what's already going on there. That's another benefit for me. I did join after the very first round of the permissionless grants. And so I am excited to talk about that too, because as an outsider, of someone who is just sort of viewing that, I thought it was absolutely brilliant, because what ended up happening was if you maintained a participation rate of voting within the Nouncil, so part of your sort of governance duties of being there, of 69% or higher, you got a 1 ETH permissionless grant to proliferate nouns. And the best part about that entire experiment was that everyone really used their grant to do such a thing, and it really worked. We saw a lot of art contests come about. I think we saw a lot of new people even enter the community because of other people's contests that they were throwing. So, you know, the way that everyone here is sort of thinking about these creative new ways that we can sort of do these things, while also maintaining this sort of core place that we can all gather, which would be that, you know, this Nouncil area. I just see it as an absolute benefit only. And I really love that. I feel like after this permissionless grant round was when I feel that Nouncil members tripled, right? I swear it was like 40 members or something, or 35. I don't even know when I had entered, but I think that
so you might have been around that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think it's important too that we really haven't solicited new members. I've kind of like, at some point we might, but just because we're so young and slowly building things, the slow trickle of members has like kind of been just happening on its own.
I did make an Uncle Joel meme once. We want you.
Oh yeah, we want you. Yeah, so minimal solicitation, not enough to, you know, get door slammed on us.
That's right.
Win door-to-door Nouncil applications.
That's actually the new permissionless grant program that will be launched next quarter. Have you heard the good news about Nouncil? Sorry, continue. Actually, maybe we'll take a pause there for a second just for some quick housekeeping. So if you're just joining us on Twitter, just as a reminder, what we're doing here today, the event is actually being held in Nouns Discord. So the link is in the pinned tweet above if you want to participate interactively and ask questions live. You can do that, but you're also welcome to just listen on Twitter if that's more convenient for you. You're just getting the simulcast audio from Discord here, and you are welcome to ask questions by replying to the pinned tweet in the space, and I'm checking that periodically. So if you reply there, we will answer the questions. And on the topic of questions, if anyone here in the Discord has questions about Nouncil or about anything else Nounish, you can either ask it in the chat up on the top right bubble. You click the top right bubble and it brings down a little chat here, and you can ask there, or you can just unmute your mic and request to speak, and we'll hear you live. So that's all the housekeeping, but let's move on and talk a little bit more in depth about the permissionless grant program. What was that all about, and how did it go?
So this ended up being the first program that Nouncil funded, and kind of the only one right now. And the idea, I was really trying to think, there was a couple of us who kind of thought it through together, and we were really trying to think about like, what is an innovative thing that Nouncil can offer to builders that really only we can do, and also it clearly benefits the stakeholders in Nouncil, who are the Nouncilers. And the community grants program ultimately in the Discord, any DAO in general, there's a lot of conversation and disagreement about pretty much anything, from what is nounish, what will proliferate nouns best, what budget should be for things, and something that I think is really powerful in the word permissionless is like allowing people to do what they believe is best, particularly when the stakes are smaller and you don't really need to discuss it with everyone. It's very empowering to just let people build. And with these community grants, the idea was like, just take it and do what you can do the absolute best thing that you can do with it to support nouns proliferation in any way you can think of. So basically like passing the mandate onto them with a little budget and then just seeing what people do, I think is a fantastic research opportunity. And also, empowering for people so they don't have to spend a lot of time trying to get money to fund something that's pretty small like this. And it becomes just like ultimately a different model, because I think, if someone really delivered with 1 ETH, why not give them 5 ETH permissionlessly? And if they really deliver with 5 ETH, like why not give them 100? And the only caveat here is after you have spent the ETH, you have to prepare a report justifying how you spent it, explaining how you proliferated nouns, how you served the mission or mandate or whatever, in order to get further funding. So it's kind of like the sales pitch happens after the project is complete, which is often the easier place to do it, especially with things like creative things or contests. Like the description about it isn't too exciting, but afterwards, when there's 50 pieces of art, it feels pretty amazing.
One of the interesting things about it, I think, is that it turns a lot of the typical proposal process on its head. So where with small grants or prop house, the idea is central, and obviously the personal reputation is also important as a secondary maybe. This sort of is basically all on reputation. You're a Nounciller in good standing. You've been doing your duties for governance. You've proven yourself to be a good actor. Here's the ETH, and we don't even need to. Well, I mean, we did ask for what people's ideas would be, but it wasn't a central tenet of the process.
It was central for delegation. So the other thing we offered, because something that's important is spending ETH effectively isn't a gift. That's a task. Like you've just been given work. Mm-hmm. Because now if you don't spend it right, there's serious consequences. Like if you spend a Nouncil community grant improperly, if you give it to yourself, and we have a rule that if you buy NFTs, I think cryptocurrency was in there too. Basically, there are things you can't do with it. You're out. Like the consequences are pretty high. And I think a huge degree of trust needs to be paired with very specific and serious consequences so that people know the boundaries.
Yeah, for sure. Aptoshi, you were going to say something. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. I was actually just going to ask, so everyone had a frame of mind, but what was this time period that people had to use this 1 ETH to proliferate?
I think it ended up being like 2 months. Right,
Okay,
Tony?
Yeah, maybe 3 months actually, I think, in the end, but it was something.
3 months, yeah. And everyone's done, by the way. I'm preparing a report now that reports are just going to be a tweet thread, and each person gets one tweet in it where they summarize their proposal and have a picture. So nothing crazy, because ultimately for people to actually read it, it needs to be really small too. Like you just, a couple pictures and a title and a sentence or two is enough. Mm-hmm. Just trying to not make people do extra work that isn't needed or won't be appreciated. Like, especially with that stuff, like we don't need an essay, but I guess essays would be awesome if we could get them, but it becomes more work than what we're paying,
I mean, it's really great because this was also funded through, on-chain through Nouns DAO. So that's what I have on the screen here. It was Prop 67.
It's Prop 66 too.
Oh,
we don't talk about that.
We don't?
No,
there it is.
Nouncil also has a training program where they'll teach you how to put props on chain. Joel was the first.
So this
of that trip.
Yeah, this was my first prop that I submitted on chain to Nouns DAO. And it's kind of an intimidating thing because once you submit it, you can't make changes. And, I guess ultimately, I've tried to delegate this to a couple other people because we've had props come through Nouncil that we get people to submit. And I've tried to get other people to submit them too because I think it's one of the most powerful things you can do in Nouns DAO is actually operate on the protocol. Like submitting a prop is one of the core things. And I think it's really cool that people get to do that and see it,
Mm-hmm.
So yes, 66, I submitted it with, we had 10 ETH in the budget to make it, what was the price? Can you scroll down the total ETH of 67?
I believe it was 52 or 54.2.
Yeah. So it was 64.20 and we redid the proposal and we cut 10 ETH off something and it became 54.20. I forgot to update the transaction and made a mistake. So the process with Nouns down that is you have to cancel the first one and resubmit it.
And
so a little like heart beating when I did it. Feels pretty silly to make a mistake like
I'm
that.
sure you checked like everything else 8 times, and I'm sure it was so ready. Oh my gosh, I know how that feels.
you checked it a lot after putting it on chain. Yes. I said at that point, Joel, you might as well have just canceled it 2 more times, so we could have been prop 69. But that's
and taken 69. Yeah.
What was your overall belief? I thought it was a great success. Like, how do you feel? Like, as someone who was there from the beginning of having this idea about this permissionless grant, like, how do you kind of feel it went?
I think it was phenomenal.
Could you mute your mic, please?
Yeah, Come, please. Little Otter, please mute your mic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, foundational. I think when we really look through the stuff and evaluate the value we got for 1 ETH per Nouncil, it ended up being a little more because you can also not accept the ETH and delegate it to another person. So, you can permissionlessly direct it to somebody. So some people got more than 1 ETH because they had got it delegated. But in terms of bang for your buck, I think this is going to turn out to be like a very surprising and impressive thing. When we pull the only thing that I think we need here is additional budget for marketing, because after all of these things are completed, right now we're just doing a tweet thread, but there's a lot of stuff we could pull from here, and have like a celebration of this round of community grants. We could make videos or possibly choose the best ones and make articles. I think there's a lot of space for that celebration because there's a lot to celebrate here.
Even just the simplest ideas, like the contests that were run by Nodes and BenBody, the art that came out of those contests was just incredible. So.
And there's something really powerful about letting Nounish builders spend this and watch others spend this and compare, and learn and almost evolve ways of spending ETH to proliferate nouns together. We all see the most successful projects. And the other thing I want to say here too, though, that's pretty important to me, and I have Crispy Nouns as the example. I run a weird 3D project called Crispy Nouns. And these are very hyper-realistic 3D models that are rigged for animation. They take forever to do. Yeah, you can see it in my profile picture right now as Crispy Noun 0. But it's kind of a passion project that I came into Nouncil pretty stoked about, but also realized it was a lot of work and it wasn't quite what Nouns needed at the moment. And so I've just been like slowly growing it because I love it. But I spent my grant on doing marketing animation with these characters for Crispy Nouns that has some funny stuff happening, and then a title shot of Crispy Nouns. It's going to be really useful. And this is part of the permissionless grant stuff too that I really wanted when I was making it is just the ability to kind of also invest it in the Nounish things that you're building. Like everyone here has projects, everyone here has communities, and contests might turn out to be like the most publicly effective way to spend a community grant. But but I do think there's also space for people to kind of more strategically invest it in projects they're working on.
It's almost better that there's a mix, actually. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's the thing about permissionless is these conversations are hard to have as a DAO with a group. Like if I want to make a 15-second or a 30-second, whatever it is, fun bumper, and I'm comparing my costs versus someone who's doing community art contest costs, like they become very different things, and I think everyone tends to just go towards the contests, whereas leaving the thought up to Nouncilers and letting them do what they think will best, propel them and their projects towards nounish proliferation just gives you a lot of different results that I think, we're going to do a couple rounds of these and we won't even know what we're going to get until those are done.
Yeah, and it's almost like there's these different types of proliferation, right? And so the contests are fantastic for bringing in new eyes, like new artists, new people that will then eventually maybe go over to the other projects that took a little bit more time or were more of a build out of something. So it's like you have your proliferation that brings in new people and is like great for onboarding. And then I think you have your people who maybe they've participated in that already, and now it's maybe time for them to dive a little bit deeper into like the specific sort of thing that they're great at within the Nouns ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely. And I see this as like fuel to be allocated at the choice of the Nouncilor that it's given to. So as long as they can make a case for it and justify it, and ideally have a little exciting piece at the end that is exactly as this was intended. Like someone, for instance, their permissionless grant was spent on a lot of networking stuff. And like trying to bridge communities together, and it becomes something it's very useful and very different, and probably that would have been a hard thing to get approved, but I really appreciate that it was done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a really cool experiment.
That's what's great about the sorry, Teddy, but the report at the end. Because, it really is on the onus of you afterwards to say, like, well, how did you spend this ETH? What did you do to proliferate? And so I think it's even more natural to sit down to do a report, like, and look back on what you've done as opposed to predicting what you might do.
Yeah, I think this also lets people plan. Like once this becomes a predictable, recurring thing, which would be the next steps, is it just becomes something that you can plan around simply. Like this is what you get regularly, consistently. And 2 people gave it back, by the way. You could refuse the ETH at the start, and you can also, and we haven't discussed this in Nouncil too much, but if you were unable to complete a project at the end, I've just been telling people to give the ETH back, and then we'll return that ETH to Nouns DAO. Which I think is an okay outcome too, as long as trust is retained and nothing's stolen.
Well, the people in question, the main reason why they returned it is because they were so busy working on really successful extension projects. So I think it's not the worst outcome.
Exactly, and that's why I think we have to tolerate and that's why I think that's a good thing. Like you accepted it. They're so busy working on nounish projects that they didn't have time to spend it, and they give it back. Like, there's nothing wrong here, We if people are so busy that on their nounish projects that they don't have time for anything else, like that's a pretty good outcome in my eyes too.
Not the worst problem to have, yeah. We do have a question from someone, Symbiotech, who's in the audience. He asked, are NNS or Nouns naming service names considered NFTs that are off limits for permissionless funding? I think it would depend on the context of what you're asking. Like if you're asking, can we use that to just buy up a bunch of 2-letter NNS? I don't think that would be a great use of a permissionless grant. But if you had some sort of other plan of proliferation that used those, I guess maybe it would be more acceptable.
Yeah, or like you had a project going and like that was part of the one thing that you got, or like $100 of your 1 ETH or something.
Certainly
like in the match project.
in the documentation, it says you can't buy NFTs,
Right.
I believe.
That's right. That's what he's asking, is if these would be considered NFTs and therefore
Yeah.
limits.
At the moment, the way we've written it, they'd be off limits. There is room for there. I think the reason we just blanket wrote off NFTs and cryptocurrency is because there's a lot of things to explore. There's a lot of gray areas with something that's so trusting and so free. It made sense to just keep it simple and say no.
And also, a lot of people were working for NFT projects, and we didn't want it to devolve into, let's use 1 ETH to sweep the floor of our own project, which typically doesn't really improve the general health of the project itself or Nouns.
Yeah. There might be space for opening the doors to that in future community grants, but we'd really have to understand proper boundaries, like what's good, what's not good. So for now, it's just a no, but to be considered in the future.
Does that answer your question, Symbiotek? I don't know if you're able to talk or if you can just type and let us know if you have any follow-up questions. Meanwhile, I'll also pause and just open the floor. If anyone else has a question about anything we've gone over a lot so far in the last 35, 40 minutes. If you have any questions, don't be shy. Unmute your mic and we'll be happy to call on you and you can ask your question and we'll answer as best we can. I do see an unmuted mic from David Bry from Verbs. How are you, David?
Good. I just joined and my mic was on by default.
Okay, sorry. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Does anyone else have any questions?
Is this meeting going to be recorded and summarized by Rocco by any chance?
We have been doing summaries or giving recordings to Rocco for summarization over the last 2, I think, Aptoshi, and we will continue with that. So yes, it will be.
Nice. Yep, that's 2 meetings so far. He also did a great job. The Prop House summary was insane.
Yeah, it's funny. Like in the very first transcription that Rocco did for one of them, nouns was misspelled most of the time as mounds or something. There was a lot of weird mistakes that you would expect. But by the time it got sort of whittled down to the summary, all of the mistakes were corrected. And according to Shep, the person who's doing the human part of that experiment, there was no human interference with that. It just kind of figured it out with iterations. So that's kind of cool.
I think mounds would be a good alternative take on YOLO nouns. Mounds is the buried nouns.
Oh, I see. Yes. Oh, like Noun Cemetery?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Grim.
It's a little grim. All right.
Yeah. What happens after you only live once?
You only live once and then you are a mound. A Noun's mound. So I have a question for you, Joel, if no one else from the audience has another question right this instant. Talk to me about how Nouncil can be a venue, an avenue for someone to get a prop on chain. How does that work? How has it worked? How do you see it working in the future?
So currently, the way I think about Nouncil is always to just enable the group to do everything the same and try and maintain sufficient decentralization. So currently, the Nouncil Gnosis Safe, with its delegated nouns, is able to submit proposals on chain. So it's kind of it's something we're able to do. So it made sense to open it up to the Nouncilers. And at the moment, any Nounciler can submit a proposal for review. It can be theirs, or they can submit it on behalf of someone else and just ask Nouncil to vote on whether they should submit it on chain. So we actually have a couple of those live in there right now, where it's just usually a HackMD link to a proposal with Markdown, and if we approve it, then we'll just take that, copy and paste it, and put it on Nouns Down. This is something that's probably going to need to evolve and change. I think it's very unique that there isn't really. There are other delegatees who are willing to submit proposals and downers that are willing to submit proposals, but something that becomes like a democratic access point to the protocol is interesting. And it won't be like it is just one entry point. I think nouners will always have there'll always be 100 nouners submitting proposal, and Nouncil just becomes the democratically accessible one. I just imagine we're going to hit our pace pretty quickly here, where we are receiving far more proposals than we can actually submit on chain. And I also think we've been pretty generous in, like, if it's someone we know and familiar with, like, there's a lot of yeses to put it on chain. And I imagine we're going to have to develop more of a selection process where, like, something I was thinking is maybe like one discussion each week on a proposal of like the best one we could find. And then every month we have a vote on which one was our favorite to submit to Nouncil, or possibly at a faster pace than that, where there's like a stream of incoming proposals to Nouncil, and then we have a way of discussing and possibly adjusting them, and then selecting the best one to submit to Nouncil. Currently, it's just anything goes.
I think it's natural as the volume goes up, similar to how some have commented that the quote-unquote difficulty has been adjusted with Nouncil proposals in general, with some others being defeated recently. And that's because of the increased volume in some ways of proposals. So, I mean, that will happen too with Nouncil naturally. The more that come in, the fewer we can obviously have the bandwidth to support. So we will have to come up with ways to select, like you're saying.
Yeah, so that will come. I do like the idea of, as much as possible, just having things be decentralized and open. Like, something that I really like with Nouncil votes, and not too many people are doing it, but it will become a part of culture over time, I hope, is anyone can call a Nouncil vote. Like, anyone can say, hey, do you like blue or black? And Nouncil will vote on it. And if you do too much of that, it gets annoying. People will communicate that to you, but like, there's no permission process to go through to put a vote up there. If you're a Nounciler, like, this is what you're allowed to do. I would hope to maintain the same thing with proposals, while also finding ways to probably decrease the volume and just decrease the volume. It hasn't been a problem, but I know it's going to be.
That's maybe a good way to segue into some of the plans that you have personally and that other leaders in Nouncil have for the future of Nouncil. I know that this is very much a work in progress, but do you want to talk a little bit about your idea for pods and how you see that forming the future of Nouncil potentially?
Yeah, this is the one. So I've been working on this doc. I took every quarter, we've had a coordinate where everyone lists the work that they've done, and then we use coordinate to allocate our quarterly operating budget, pay everyone for it.
I want to come back to that in a few minutes and ask another question about it, but yeah, go ahead.
I've used the documentation from that where everyone describes the work they've done, and I've kind of compiled them into loose pods. And a pod, as I'm using it, is an autonomous working group. And the way I'm actually trying to think about it is they're not actually sub-DAOs of Nouncil. They could actually become a role maintaining them. And if that comes what I'm trying to do is just make these things.
Joel, you were underwater for a sec. If you can rewind just to 10 seconds.
What was the last thing I said?
You said they weren't really sub-DAOs, but they are.
Oh, so like actual like DAOs. I've been thinking about this a lot in general with the idea of sub-DAOs. Like, why not make everything just a autonomous DAO? For instance, like one of the ones I've been thinking of is Nouncil meetings. There's two of them now, and there's going to be more, and it becomes a thing that you could just bring all the leaders who are organizing meetings together and possibly just call it a pod, give them a budget, and let them self-manage so that they can kind of grow this thing as they need to. And the way I see it is that's not like working under Nouncil. Like, you could actually just call it the Nounish Meetings pod. And now that's a thing that operates on its own. Nouncil supports it, and it can become a resource to anyone doing meetings in the Nounish world. So I'm trying to think about broad pods that Nouncil could create. And in doing so, the first one that I want to create is the Nouncil pod, which is just a team of Nouncilers that comes together and tries to think about delegating responsibilities and tasks and creating pods to take them up.
Hey, bro,
and also creating.
Hey, bro, I heard you like pods, so we made a pod for your pods.
Hey, bro, I heard you like pods, so we made a pod.
Yeah, I totally got a pod for you, dude.
Yeah.
Is it a Tide pod?
That name makes me smile every time, which is why I know it's a good idea.
Well, I see Muggle Josh there in the audience, and he looks like someone that would support pods. I think he would like to be a part of
I
it.
have a question. You talked a bit about being part of the Nouncil's work, real work. I wanted maybe you could give us an idea of what exactly should a person, let's say, who wants to join Nouncil expect so that you can maybe take out time out of your day to work on these things. What is some of the work examples that take place in the Nouncil?
Good question.
The primary work is showing up, being present, just like being a part of these discussions takes a lot of time. But Nouns DAO governance and prop house right now, I would say, is what actually becomes work, where when a Nouns DAO proposal is submitted, ideally Nouncilors are reading it and evaluating it, posting thoughts about it publicly, and ultimately voting on it in Nouns Vote. Also, when things are posted to discourse, so Nouns DAO proposals in the works, Nouncilors are often pretty active reviewing and giving feedback on those. Same thing with prop house, generally smaller proposals, but a larger volume of them. Just going through them, reading them all, evaluating them, discussing in public, and making a decision and voting. All of that is Nouncil's responsibility, we would call it right now. And it's currently not part of what can be compensated in the coordinate. It's just what you're expected to do to be eligible for Nouncil programs. But it turns into a lot of work, honestly, like being active in governance and having reasonable opinions and making decisions on these things takes a lot of your time.
Not only that, but like listening to people and their props, reaching out to people, being reached out to, people connecting with each other. Like that is where I feel like there's a lot of time that does happen. But basically the required piece is maintaining voting quorum. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the main thing required for eligibility with programs is just voting on the proposals and maintaining a participation rate above 69%. So that's like on paper what's required is you just have to vote. And ideally on top of voting, you also read the proposals and understand them and discuss them.
Yes.
So blowned.eth actually just asked where he could find information on the Nouncil permissionless grant. So this is a good opportunity if you can go back to the Nouncil page. So this is the Nouncil webpage. If you're on Discord, you can click through and you can take a look at it. Aptoshi has it up on her stream. If you're joining on Twitter, you can go into a browser and just put Nouncil, NOUNCIL.WTF, and that's our main page. And we have a bunch of documents that are eventually going to be hosted natively on the site, but for now they're hosted on a Google Docs drive. But you can see our governance document, which basically is all the rules that we've agreed to abide by. You can see all of our meetings notes on the left. You can see our voting record. So votes, and who else does that, Joel? Is it votes?
Votes does a huge amount of it.
Yeah.
There's probably other people. This is kind of that like decentralized delegation thing. Like I've just given a couple of people I trust access to it and said, if you ever notice it's empty, go and fill it out. But votes has definitely been very consistent with that voting record form.
So that voting record shows basically every Nouncilor's voting record on every prop that's ever gone through Nouncil. So pretty exhaustive, and that type of rote work is something that obviously needs a lot of help because it's too much for one person to take on, although Votes does a really great job of keeping that up to date. And then Nouncil planning is just a document about some general goals. Nouncil membership is interesting, and we try to keep it as up to date as possible, but that shows you a Google Excel document of everyone who is a current member of Nouncil and all their information and whatnot. Again, we hope to eventually have this all hosted in a nicer manner on the actual site, but for now the information is all public and there. We have a Nouncil Welcome to Nouncil document, which even if you haven't joined Nouncil is a good thing to read, just to sort of familiarize yourself with what we do and how we do it, if it's something that you're considering joining. And then if you go back, that's the text of our proposal that we talked about earlier. And on the right side, you can see 2 programs, Retroactive Coordinate and Nouncilor Permissionless Grants. So if you click there, Blonde, you'll be able to see the guidelines for that. If you're looking for the results of the program, that's coming soon. Everyone has been filling out address forms with all the information about what they did, and Joel is compiling that all into a Twitter thread. So connect with Joel and he can get you information on the actual deliverables.
I'll be posting that one soon. It's complete.
Okay, awesome. And what else was I going to say about that? Oh, so if we go back up to programs, I wanted to just touch quickly on coordinate rounds, because I think this is something really interesting that Nouncil kind of pioneered. Over at the Noun Square, we've actually taken it and made it our own, and we use this model basically to reward our team members as well. So tell us just a little bit about how Nouncil rewards people for work completed and how that's been going since inception.
So from the beginning, we didn't entirely know what Nouncil was going to do or what Nouncilors would be asked to do. And so this structure was to have a budget and to work for a quarter. And then at the end of the quarter, decide how to allocate the budget according to work completed. We do that by just collecting work summaries for the quarter into a document, and then everyone reads it and then joins the coordinate and usually get give tokens. So if I had 100 give, for instance, then I would allocate that 100 give to people as I think the proportions of work had been done. And then that would determine how much ETH you get from the quarter.
Can you show coordinate, Aptoshi, if you're able? No, like just type coordinate in to show people that don't know what it looks like.
Oh, yes, of course.
Sorry, Joel, continue.
That's it. Oh. Really. There's a lot more interesting stuff that comes from that. Like the tool leads to certain things, but I think it was quite successful in terms of just like bringing people in, encouraging people to work, and also defining the scope of what we would consider. So, for instance, discussing things in Nouncil, voting on proposals, and just socializing and joining meetings was never part of what you could be compensated for, and we made that clear. And then we also outlined a variety of things that could be compensated for, and it just becomes a way to like flexibly allow people to work at their own pace on what they want to do and determine the value of that later.
Well, an example of that would be the site itself, right? So Sir Nodes at one point, and I believe Dot from Lil Nouns just sort of whipped up that site overnight one day, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, people have just taken initiative to do things that are needed.
Totally, which is kind of something I'm really trying to enable is like often just as a creator, as a programmer, like I just want to build. Like I spend on in other jobs and on bigger projects, you spend so much time thinking about getting permission for things and making sure you're networked with the right people and it's situated in the right thing. If you can identify something that you know how to do and you can just do it, like Nodes built that site and all I did was point the domain of it. Like he needed no permission. There was no process required. It just go ahead and do it. Sure. And he knew what he was going to do. And it took a day,
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. One of the things, going back to the rewards for a second, Aptoshi, I just wanted to say that when we first started using Coordinate, it was my second time using it, but first time really ever using it within a DAO context. And I wasn't sure how it was going to go because there's a lot of people who who sort of participate in the active running of Nouncil, but some spend a lot more hours than others. And I just wasn't sure how it was going to work with community and peers, allocating tokens, and was it going to become a popularity contest or just giving to your friends, or all sorts of things could happen. But we were all shocked, I think, how accurately something like Coordinate identifies who's done what and who's given what effort and rewards them accordingly. So highly recommend anybody who's doing anything that requires teams to look at this type of a system for the rewards base versus something more strictly, meat space based on, you did this is your reward. And I know, Joel, you are an advocate for maybe some kind of a combination, which is what these pods are going to aim to do. But ultimately, I think it's still an important tool in Nouncil's arsenal.
Yeah, the main thing I'm doing with pods is I'm going to give pods their own budgets, so that it's not, because ultimately when coordinates get bigger, as we found with this Prop 63 with 105 people, the results were actually interesting, but it does become harder to wrap your head around it. Whereas like with Nouncil, there's maybe like 5 to 10 people in the last coordinate round, and you know them all, you've seen all their work, and you have a good sense of how much you want to allocate. With pods, they can have their own separate coordinates, and possibly they could do them monthly, or they could make them more specific however they need to get accurate value from them. So it could be this exact same thing, just with always like smaller focus groups.
Very cool. Anybody else have any questions about all the many things we've gone over about Nouncil today? I really appreciate your breadth of knowledge on this, Joel, and I know you could talk about it forever, so it was the no-brainer decision to bring you on to sort of help people get an understanding. Opening the floor.
Appreciate it.
Opening the floor again to anyone who's here in Discord. I see Psych Dre is on mic. Do you have a question, Dre?
Hey, friends, I have a question, but it has nothing to do with what was Joel was speaking about. So I don't know if now's the time or not.
It's about nouns, I assume?
Oh, yeah, of course. But I don't want to take away from what Joel was talking about,
No, go ahead. We can be flexible and come back around after. Go ahead.
Awesome. Well, first of all, I apologies about the unmuted mic earlier. You know how Discord is. I just wanted to say, I feel like it was just yesterday that I was in here about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and you and Uptoshi gave me that awesome feedback. So I wanted to say a big thanks. Obviously, you guys have seen what I've been building with the walking nouns and just doing a noun a day. I applied to the Nouncil, so that is something I did. Keep an eye out for that vote, hopefully. But I wanted to start with that. Just give you guys a thank you for the awesome feedback you guys gave me a couple weeks back. It really means a lot. I had a quick question. I was planning on doing a prop house where, believe it or not, I've actually 3D printed the Nouns O'Clock Tower.
Oh, nice. And
it looked unbelievably awesome. So I was going to put up a prop house round for that. I wanted to give somebody the tower away as like a contest, essentially. So I just wanted to ask you guys, it's a one chance I get to come up here and ask, what do you guys think would be a good number? Are we thinking like maybe 5 of these towers to give away? Are we thinking 2 weeks? I would ideally like to do this, of course, with Nouns O'Clock, which I really like what you guys are building. So, I guess that'd be the only thing. Again, it's the 3D printed tower. It looks unbelievable on the 3D printer. And it's been painted with this awesome, shiny material. It looks unbelievable. I've been really busy over at my studio. But, if you guys have any feedback, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you can definitely do a prop on prop house, and I would just take the cost of however much it costs to do that, plus your time, and then divide it by the amount for the round, which is typically 2 ETH, and then figure out how many to make if you want to go that route. Or you can just slide in my and Uptoshi's DMs, and maybe we could talk about doing a giveaway or something on the show and figuring something out to pay you for your time and materials. That's a possibility as well. But it sounds pretty cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Like I said, of course, when it comes to time, material, all that math, it's always tricky to figure out the right amount. I think the prop house for this round, I think it's 2 ETH that's going up for winning. So we'll see what happens. But regardless, I'm very excited to share this with you guys. like I said, I would love to give away some stuff. I just like building, whether it's 3D digitally, whether it's 3D physically. I'm very comfortable in the space. So again, just thank you guys for the feedback, and I'm looking forward to just continue building and continue growing.
Awesome. And I love that, you obviously carry that same energy where all of this ability to work within this system is just like inspiring you, and you're creating more and more. And I see that. So that's really awesome. I can't wait to see that. The little clocky, I think is what we call him, the 9 o'clock clock. So, but you did say something. You said that you had applied for Nouncil, which reminded me of a question I had. Joel, when is the next, I know that you can go on the site right now and submit an application. When is the next time that these next round of applications are going to get looked at?
So every month on the 1st, we pull out all the applications, we put them in Nouncil votes, and in 60 hours should have a decision on them all. So this next one will happen in
2 days.
In 2 days. Yeah.
1 day, actually. No, 2 days.
And I see the application there. So we have received it.
That's awesome. Again, that only came through because I was in here a couple weeks ago, and Tony and Abtashi were the ones that said, hey, you should definitely throw an application that way. So it's awesome to be able to come into the space, like Abtashi says, with good vibes, good energy, and to get feedback. Keep an eye out for the application. I continue building. It's what I do. So I'm very happy that you guys have it, and hopefully I can join the Nouncil. If that does happen, it's only gonna go up from there. I love to be here. Thanks again, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Dre, for the feedback. It's always good to hear that there's some good coming from these things. So amazing. Maybe one thing that I'd like to do, Abtoshi, if we can, before we sort of close out, if there's no other questions, we do have 9999 here, and I don't want to put you on the spot, Mr. 9999, but I'm curious to know so if you don't know, 9999 is one of the co-founders of Nouns. And he's taking his time to be with us today, which is awesome. I'm wondering, from his perspective as a co-founder of Nouns, how he feels about Nouncil, and what do you think Nouncil has contributed to Nouns over the last 8 months, I guess? Are you there, Nine? You seem to be muted. I don't know if we can hear you there, Nine. Okay, well, we'll move along. If we get Nine back, then we'll ask the question again. Otherwise, tune in next week to find out what 9999 thinks about Nouncil.
That's why we put his ghost on the flyer.
That's actually something I'd be really interested in general, is the Nouner competition with Nouncil. It has really just grown into this unique thing, and there are some Nouners on Nouncil.
Yes.
But I'd love to just connect all those conversations.
Yeah.
Hey, real quick, I just want to say, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go. Who's talking?
Yeah, hi, the motion's not. I just want to say thanks. Last time I was in here, I got some advice. I think Toshi was mentioning some things, and just about props and putting props out there, and how to design it, how to describe it, and put the order of kind of what you wanted to share, and all those things were really helpful. I just want to say thanks.
Awesome.
Sweet. Awesome.
It's becoming a love in here. I love it.
I know. Well, that's why we hold these spaces. And, I think it's important. And sometimes you feel like there's so much you need to know, and it really just is not like that. So there's just all these different pieces of this community, and you can just slowly get to know each of them. That's what's been really cool about, sort of having these spaces to also educate people on these different various things, such as Prop House and now Nouncil. I hope you guys can get your applications in. If you've been building within the community and haven't joined yet, you do have about a 2-day period to do that. So,
and how do you join?
How
do you apply to join Nouncil?
Well, I put the actual URL here in the community voice chat for you guys, nouncil.wtf, and then I think it's just bam right there. Sure. Apply for membership right at the top of the website.
And we use Address Forum, which is built by Brian, the engineer, who's a resident at Nouns. So you don't have to use Google Forms or dox yourself in any way. You can just fill it out using whatever wallet you'd like. You connect your wallet and you apply. So it's very, very seamless and very Web3.
I have two alpha ideas here. One is maybe we should think about just sending the applications to Discord and having us automatically vote on them on a rolling basis.
That'd be kind of interesting. You could do that through Zap or something else, maybe, or.
Yeah, there's an API with address form, so it'd actually be pretty easy. Anyways, just thought of that right now. The other thing is, can I drop some Nerman alpha here?
Yes, tell us what Nerman is, first of all.
So Nerman is a Nounish community bot ecosystem. It's actually like multiple bots that I've been building kind of in silence for a couple months now. A lot of the complicated backend stuff is done, and you'll start to see some more public Nerman stuff now as I'm rolling things out. One of the features that was the first one I wanted to finish was for Nouncil, and ultimately for anyone who wants to do both. But Nerman will handle voting within Discord, using some new Discord features such as modals and the button API, in what should feel like a smooth process where anyone can have kind of token-gated voting channels with database that records the activity, so that this will also be something Nouners can use, and ultimately anyone can fork this code because it will be open source and implement token-gated voting in their own Discords. It's ready to go. Pay attention to the in Nouns DAO Discord. There's 77-Nerman project channel, and I'm going to be posting some invite links to a Discord in there for people to go in and test it out because it's functioning now. And it will ideally replace the hashtag Nouncil votes channel with a more automated process.
Very, very cool. We're getting alpha dripped on these shows now, even better.
Alpha drip.
So we're going to do one of those awkward pauses now where I really open the floor to anyone who has a question and is just shy about butting in on anyone talking. So we'll not talk here for a minute. And if anyone does have a question, please feel free to jump in. We'll answer a couple more before we call it a day.
The theme song. Can Otoshi play this theme song? I want to hear the Nouncil theme song.
With the caveat that Discord does a horrible job of parsing music through this chat, so we can play it, but...
I can also post it here. It looks like it's here on this... Let me see. Hold on one second. I'll copy the link here, but let's see if I can get this going.
Oh, it's by Super Tight Woody. That's just crazy.
The house counts. We got dollars and pounds to put in accounts to fund all the proposals. We got builders at our disposal. He's in the medic, yeah, we some mobiles. Nouns are global. I can swoosh to this Web3. Shout to the toes with the Nounish blue and the web feet. The market's always bulled like some red meat. All we do is excel like a spreadsheet. Big up the grip in the forward.
Please let those US stop it. It sounds so bad.
If you own it now you can delegate your vote out to the Nouns. It's council. We got dollars and pounds put in accounts to fund all the...
Can you guys hear that?
I mean, yeah, but they made the rapping's amazing, but it sounds like it's coming through a tin can.
Sounds like Coca-Cola.
I was like, Woody's going to kill us for playing it like that.
I couldn't hear you guys, and so, but I saw some frantic lights flashing around your name, so I didn't think it was sounding very good. But I did post there in the actual chat, so you guys can go listen to yourselves.
It kind of sounded like that was like the audio only track somehow. Like Discord stripped all the music out when you played it through. But anyways, it is an awesome song that Woody made before he even joined the Nouncil, so that was pretty cool.
That was also the permissionless stuff. Like someone just said "Win Nouncil theme song," and someone just made it.
Yeah.
You know, like anything that ultimately there's a lot of bureaucratic stuff that gets in the way of that natural process of like, oh, I'm excited about this, I'm going to do it. I try to step back and just like let that stuff happen. And then you get theme songs like that. Not
to get too deep with it either, but I mean, yeah, it was just a theme song. It was a fun idea. CDT said, well, my friend Woody does awesome rap songs for Cryptodes. Let me reach out to him. You know, Woody makes this banger and then like joins Nouncil, and now he's like full-fledged Nounpilled. So, I mean, yeah, I think you never know how these permissionless things are going to go, but we're glad to have
I can't wait to do a permissionless grant. It's going to be super fun. I was on the sidelines with Toast Dog just salivating last time, and I'm ready.
We've talked about
Yeah,
this.
exactly.
Please try to keep it to a minimum. The sound.
Nouncil drip.
That's what we mean by Nouncil drip, yeah.
I was gonna say though, like it's such a great. I've had such a great experience like with onboarding, you know, and I'm in the process of writing my first proposal up, and it's just like I feel like I'm a great example of somebody who just came in, and like you were just saying, now I'm just noun-pilled and I'm just all about it. But in the process of joining Nouncil and then being on all the calls, you get a real good understanding of how the ecosystem works and like how everything sort of functions together. There's so many different moving parts. There's so many different projects that it's super educational for onboarding your brain into the ecosystem if that's what you want to do. And it's really valuable because, you know, like you guys were talking about earlier, you don't necessarily need to own a noun to go through the motions and do the things that nouners do. And I think it's a really cool process. And it's it's great for onboarding talented, creative, hardworking, wonderful people. And it's great for networking within those people. So thank you guys for everything.
I think that's a really good point, Super Tight Woody, that we haven't really touched on today, although we've circled all around it, is that a lot of times people do drop in the Discord and they say, how can we get involved with nouns? And that's one of the subjects we've been trying to tackle with these AMAs or these Ask Us Anythings. But this is like a really tangible thing you can do if you're a builder and you're getting involved with nouns. Like Woody just said, you can join Nouncil and figure out your place and figure out what you can build. So it's a really good first step into the Nouniverse if you're looking for that. And also, as Joel mentioned earlier, the qualifications to join Nouncil are not super strict. You just need to be a Nounish builder. We've only rejected a few applications over the last 8 months, and it's always been because someone hadn't really built anything in Nouns yet, and some of those people have come back to join later once they had. So
I would say most of them, because in this application round, there's also a few of those.
Oh, nice.
They showed up, they applied for Nouncil day one, and we said no because they hadn't built anything yet. And then 2 months later, they're back.
They always come back. No, that's great. I have to give a shout out to Madrovsky as well in the chat for saying Rocco will have no idea what just hit him when Toshi played that song.
I'm sorry. It's so clear on my end.
It was a good taster, but yeah, you really can't play music through Discord, unfortunately. We thought Twitter Spaces was bad for piping music through, but somehow it's even worse. And I'd love to hear how it sounded to our poor people on the end of the
Twitter
on the simulcast who were hearing it through a tin can, then along the string and over the other tin can. Probably not great. But all right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us here today. I'll open the floor one last time for a question. If someone had a burning one that they didn't get a chance to ask rather, or have answered, and then we will call it a day and regroup here next week. Any final questions, either here or on Twitter? You can do a quick comment. I'll keep an eye out over the next minute here for a final question. And in the meantime, maybe I'll just put Joel on the spot and just say, what do you think is the greatest achievement that Nouncil has sort of achieved in the last 8 months?
Building a community, no doubt. That is like the foundational easy answer. Just when I was here in Nouns in November, I think is when I started, and I started working on Nerman in November, and I was on Twitter just retweeting people pretty actively in November, and there was all these people like on Twitter. Like I remember just paying attention to like Node stuff and Vode stuff and all these communities, creators putting stuff out there, but it wasn't really in Nouns Discord too much. Like they post links here or there, but they didn't feel like part of the community fully. And I feel like when Nouncil happened, all of those people I saw actively creating stuff on Twitter came to Nouncil, became Nouncilers, and now feel like they are the community. And I think that like now this is just the way it is. Like we have a community.
Very cool.
Now I actually have a quick question for you guys. So SQX here, Little Nouner. We are forming through the Prop House Little Nouncil, and it's kind of, we're like running through the different iterations of what it is and what the purpose of it is for us. I'm just wondering, when you guys initially formed versus now, are the ideas basically the same? How did you form the first group? Obviously, you guys kind of want to build it out to as many people as it appears as want to join. So we're kind of going through those growing pains over there, trying to figure out how to best purpose. One of our main issues is reaching quorum. Mm-hmm. I think that's kind of what we're trying to focus on. Maybe, I don't even know. So I guess the simple question is, when you formed, what was the main purpose and how did that go versus where you are now?
So I can take that one. The main purpose of Nouncil when it was first put together was basically to be a place where builders or representatives from nounish extensions or derivatives could have a voice in the DAO. It stemmed, like Joel said earlier, from a conversation on Twitter between Nouns co-founder 4156 and actually Al409, who's now quite active in Lil Nouns, so you'll know him. They were talking on Twitter about this very thing, like how the relationship of extension projects and the DAO could be improved. And from that conversation, 4156 said, well, what if we had like a council of nounish builders within the Discord to try to bridge that gap? The same day, he made a chat in Discord and sort of tweeted about it. And anyone who saw that tweet and had their interest piqued jumped in the Discord and joined. And there was obviously a pent-up demand for something like this because off the bat, we had about 24 people who were like, yeah, this is something we need. So that was the genesis of Nouncil within Nouns. I don't know if you have the same types of pains within Lil Nouns, because I feel like more of the people who participate within Lil Nouns are owners as a percentage than within Nouns, for sure, because Nouns only has 200 and some NFT owners and many thousands of people who are involved in the ecosystem. So your purposes might be different, and I'm not sure. It'll come down to what your goal is for creating a Little Nouncil. So maybe I would throw it back to you and say, what are you guys trying to accomplish by creating a Little Nouncil that's not already accomplished by your League of Littles, by the way?
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're seeking, because it's definitely where your Nouncil is to find people, because obviously there is a large barrier to entry for Nouns, where our barrier to entry is not as large. So finding people is not necessarily a problem. Finding people who want to engage, I'm sure you guys probably have the same issue with Nouns. It's the idea of governing is exciting. When it actually comes down to governing, it's not fun. So, thanks. I think that's basically what we're trying to figure out.
So it sounds like you want your Little Nouncil to be like an activation engine for people within the DAO. I'd be curious. I bet Joel has some thoughts on this. He's great with this type of stuff.
Yeah, I have infinite thoughts, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me on this. One, you guys can join Nouncil, by the way. So anyone who's an active builder on Nounish stuff in Little Nouns or any community like that is totally welcome here as well. And if I can help in any thinking through things like a Little Nouncil, I'm more than willing to do that. It really depends on what your community needs. You were mentioning struggling to meet quorum as a DAO with NFT votes, right? That was a pain point?
It's a potential pain point. I mean, we can get over the Little Nounders having, if they want to come in and vote to kind of push it over the edge, they can definitely reach the quorum, I believe, on their own. But yeah, so for instance, the mini balls won last night. It came, we were like 12 votes away.
Sorry, maybe we should give some context to mini balls for anyone who doesn't know what that's.
Schweddy's balls. I know Victor's. I know you guys have the large basketballs, the Nouns balls, and he had the mini basketballs that we just not pushed through, but proposal passed last night. Pretty excited about that. But again, it was like there was 512 or 507 for one was against, one was abstain, and then, but we needed like 522 to get to quorum. And there was like 2 hours, but it's just, at that point too, it's like, who hasn't voted? How do we round up these votes? There's lots of different ways that we can go about this, I suppose. Delegation is definitely something that we need. I'm really looking forward to that Agora project. But yeah, I think a lot of it is the growing pains and the fact like we're kind of spiraling, not out of control, but just spiraling. And so figuring out what we need and where we need it and how we need it is, yeah, Joel, I'd appreciate you coming in and thinking with us.
Yeah, then that might be something I need to ponder on. But an idea right now is find people who are actively involved with reviewing and making decisions on governance and find ways to highlight and support them and delegate to them. That might help with that in general. It's basically like increasing the number of active governors in your system. And so with Nouncil, something that's interesting is we have votes delegated to us, but also what happened after Nouncil forms was people who owned a lot of nouns ended up delegating them to individuals. And most of those individuals happen to be Nouncilers. So Nouncil has all its votes, but also like many of its members now have delegated nouns. And building an ecosystem of delegatees, even before you have the technology, is something that I think would be a really beneficial focus so that you have an idea of like, these are your large voting blocks and this is your huge group of people that has like a small amount of votes, but is actively participating. And you can build the community around that. Or devise incentive programs to affect that as well.
I was thinking also, Joel, your idea about pods, about breaking tasks or task groups into pods might be even more important for something like Little Nouns, where you have, over 5,000, well, probably not unique holders, but over 5,000 NFTs in the wallets of how many holders, SQ?
Yeah, pods is a powerful thing. And it's the next step so community grants is permissionless ETH to individuals to spend it proliferating nouns. And pods, I'm trying to think through a system of how you could spin up pods quickly and you get responsibility and a budget. And it's like you've now permissionally given that pod the ability to act.
By the way, they do already have some pods. So they've already sort of started that process. I've seen they have a data pod, for example, which I think SQ might even be involved with. And they also have a content pod, which Super Tight Woody just started with another member. So they're already on that track, and maybe that needs to be integrated with whatever vision of Little Nouncil they decide to do, if that makes sense.
With the price point of Little Nouns, I kind of think Little Nouns is almost a big Nouncil.
Yeah, it's true.
Like I have a little noun, like any builder can kind of afford to get a little noun.
Well, the first time I heard someone in Discord say that Little Nouns was thinking of doing a Little Nouncil, my first reaction was why? Because you don't have the same pain point that Nouns does with a lot of builders looking to connect with the DAO without being owners of the NFTs. But it sounds like your Little Nouncil just might have a different purpose altogether, which is perfectly fine too.
Yeah, it's different, the same. Have conflicting ideas a little bit. So we're, it's as you guys know, the more people you get involved, everybody has an idea, and so finding the correct path or just any path.
Well, since you have thousands of people, it's almost like you guys will have multiple Little Nouncils, and it's going to be whatever your group's called. But what you should probably focus on is getting a group of holders together where you guys are all going to pool, your votes. And so like your Little Nouncil, if you want to call it that, would actually just be your community group that you brought together and how many votes that has. So maybe if you get that going, I have a couple of Little Nouns. I'd join your squad. But I think
the pods are dope. Like the pod concept is so good. And like, this is such a great conversation. I almost feel like we could do a spaces about it or something and talk super transparently. Like,
yeah, we were talking about the pods and this morning and how to fund them and how best to fund them. And I think we were both kind of on the same page, which is slightly on opposite sides of the page, I guess.
I like that.
I'm super excited for where this is all going. It's just in through the pain points. And like you said, your pain, it's fun to see noun pain points, especially coming in after, and then being in the Little Nouns where it's like, what are we here? As far as, I know we're not like net, if you will, but we kind of are. Like, we're years ahead of where the nouns are, right? As far as like,
well, yeah,
individual
you're
token.
speed running the governance of nouns for sure.
Yeah,
which is already
it's fun.
speed running the governance of the real world. So it's amplified and leveraged for sure. The only thing I would say is maybe a piece of advice is when you are doing the pods, resist the temptation to sort of structure them too much to a sense where like every little task that gets done within the pod has a certain price and this person did that. Like, rely on the permissionlessness that Joel was talking earlier, but use the pods as like a mechanism for that permissionlessness. So if you have, if you think that the treasury should allocate X amount of ETH to content, just give it to the pod and let the pod do its thing and then judge it afterwards as to whether it was a success or not. And don't worry about it too much would be my advice.
Well said.
Joel?
Perfect. I appreciate
that. Ties into how I think in general is it's just like build first, work first, come with a vision and act on your vision, and everything else happens after. Is the way that I, find myself succeeding and having the most fun. So I guess the other thing with Lil Nouncil is there anyone in your group who has a really strong vision? Is there anyone who could carry it forward? Or if you feel that, if you feel like good, strong energy, like see how far they could go and give them some space to affect change. But thank you for dropping in. It's a fun ending to this conversation too.
Yeah,
no, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys.
I do want to wrap up here because I know, Joel, you've got some places to be. Akfa mentioned he did have a question. If you can make it quick, Akfa, we'll take it quickly here before we wrap.
Yes, of course. Thank you. I just wanted to ask you about the applications. When are you going to review them?
Oh, so Joel mentioned this a little earlier, but you might have missed it. So they are reviewed on the 1st of every month. So if you've already made an application, then your application will go up for voting on the 1st, and then we have 60 hours for voting. Yeah. So you'll hear back soon.
You'll be tagged in a post shortly after, probably Thursday or Friday.
Perfect. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You have my vote. You have my vote, Akfa, for sure. You're doing great things.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate it.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. I think we should probably wrap it up here, Toshi. We've gone a little over time and don't want to take up everyone's whole afternoon.
Nerman is calling to me.
Oh.
Yeah, I thought that earlier when you were mentioning like how you want to just build and you don't want to be distracted by things. I'm like, oh, great. We've got him out here for an hour and a half in the middle of the afternoon talking about Nouncil.
It's a good mix of stuff. I think you can't build in isolation, or you show up with a finished product and everyone's like, what is that? I don't get it.
Who dis?
Well, look at all the insight you got to see today too, of like the actual questions that people would have about Nouncil. And then I think even I loved the perspective of the little Nouncil, because it almost even shows you did solve those sort of issues with the initial growing pains with them. So I think that's great to get to see as well too, just to take a break from building and just have people still talking about the thing you're building. I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it's all really connected to people, and I'm very proud and happy to be involved with part of it.
Thank you for all the work you do for Nouncil. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And we can't
thank you guys too.
Can't wait to see Nerman in the wild. He was really cute when he came on our spaces. So
absolutely, it's running, like it's done, and we're testing it right now.
Oh, that's exciting.
So it could happen very fast, and we'll just replace it, automate everything.
Yes, automate all the things. One last note as we break here. Next week for our Ask Us Anything, we're going to do a very broad topic rather than a narrow one like we did today. We want to do a mix of things so that people don't feel like they have a question but it doesn't match the subject matter. So if you have a question about anything nouns, please keep it in your back pocket. You can message either Aptoshi or myself to get it locked in for next week. But otherwise, just come and bring your question, and we're going to just try to answer 20 to 25 questions from people in the community about literally anything nouns. So it's going to be very open forum next week, same time at 2 p.m. on Tuesday.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Get those questions ready.
Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you everyone on Twitter for joining us as well. And hopefully the audio quality was fine. for everything except for the music, probably that sounded like it was coming from a tin can. But otherwise,
thanks for that, guys. Thank you. Thanks, Fran, for all the feedback.
Yeah, please check out the Nouncil. Please check out Super Tight Woody's Twitter. He has a lot of really good music, and that did not do it justice.
Yes, I put the link in the chat there. It's so good. Please go listen to it.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot.
Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
You guys have a good day.
Bye.